Right, we'll start with what starts cancer. The ultimate cause is gene mutations, which are alterations to your DNA. Your body checks for these and usually does not overlook them, but in some cases, these stay and can cause cancer. More on that later. Gene mutations have causes also. They can happen due to a variety of factors, both genetic and environmental. Genetic causes are hereditary. Gene mutations can be passed down generations. Some cancers can form due to these factors, but most cancers are formed due to environmental factors. These can be chemicals known as carcinogens, which increase your risk of cancer. These can be found in pretty much everything such as cleaning products, pesticides, car exhaust, certain foods like seafood, which is mercury, asbestos, and for us in California, pretty much anything with a Proposition 65 label. You will see these labels in the grocery store, restaurants, hardware stores, and other places. These labels are meant to keep people with high risk of developing cancer cells away from carcinogens to keep them healthy. If you are not high risk, keep note of these labels, but do not slap yourself. Just consume these products in moderation like you should with anything. Other factors include hormones, smoking, which includes many carcinogens every time you inhale it, radiation, UV light especially from sunlight, viruses, chronic disorders, and more. These can increase your risk of developing gene mutations. The next slide will go over how these causes will affect your cells and form cancer cells.
So how are cancer cells formed? The one-word answer is mutations, but it is actually far more complicated, so we're going to get a gist of it. So first of all, we need to understand that our cells are constantly dividing through a process called mitosis. This image gives a good overview. The cells growing during interphase. During prophase, the DNA in the cell condenses into chromosomes. During metaphase, the chromosomes line up in the middle, and if you look closely, there are dotted lines that are called spindle fibers. During anaphase, these spindle fibers pull halves of the chromosomes to polar ends of the cells. During telophase, membranes are formed around the chromosomes, and finally cytokinesis splits the cell into two. This process keeps happening all the time in your body. Your cells keep dividing. But they are controlled and they know when to stop, because if there are certain suppressor genes in the DNA, or if these genes get mutated or have mistakes in them, then that's when the cells turn cancerous. Cancer is the uncontrolled division of cells. When the cells divide without any control, there's an excess amount of cells. This is what results in the formation of tumors, which pretty much is cancer. Next, we will go over the different stages of cancer.
There are 4 stages of cancer. The first stage is called stage 1. In this stage, cancer is localized and has not gone deeply into the tissue. It has not spread to the other parts of the body or the lymph nodes. This is called an early stage cancer. In the second stage, or known as stage 2, the cancer has grown deeply into the tissue and is much larger, but it still hasn't spread to the other parts of the body. And in stage 3, the cancer is large and has spread to surrounding tissue or the lymph nodes. And lastly is stage 4. The cancer has spread from its original area to more than one organ. These cancers are known as secondary or metastatic cancers. Additionally, there's another stage called stage 0, and in this stage, there's no cancers, but there are normal cells that could potentially become cancer. These precancers are also known as carcinomas. That's it for stages of cancer. Next up is breast cancer.
Now we'll be talking about breast cancer. Breast cancer is a type of cancer that forms in the cells of breast and starts with the cells growing out of control. Some common symptoms of breast cancer involve having lumps in the breast or underarm, swelling or thickness of the breast, irritation in the skin of the breasts, redness, flaky skin, or pain in the nipple area, discharge of blood from the nipple, and change in the shape or size of the breasts. The causes of breast cancer are generally unknown, but doctors do know that breast cancer is caused by damage to a cell's DNA. There are multiple risk factors for breast cancer. Having a family history of breast cancer, being a woman, obesity, late pregnancies or never being pregnant, aging, and previous treatments are all risk factors. Being a woman is a risk factor because women are about 100 times more likely to develop breast cancer in their lives than men are. Aging is also a risk factor because breast cancer is more likely to show up for older people. Previous treatments, such as birth control and radiation exposure, increase the chances of someone developing breast cancer as well. There are some ways to treat breast cancer. They involve surgery, chemotherapy, hormonal therapy, radiation therapy, and biological therapy. In surgery, doctors would cut out cancer tissue. Chemotherapy is when medicines would shrink or kill cancer cells, while hormonal therapy blocks cancer from getting hormones that they require to be able to grow. Radiation therapy uses high energy rays to kill the cancer cells, and biological therapy helps with the side effects of treatment and can work with your immune system to help it fight cancer cells. There are multiple types of breast cancer. The most common ones are ductal carcinoma in situ, invasive ductal carcinoma, inflammatory breast cancer, and metastatic breast cancer. Ductal carcinoma in situ is a type of non-invasive breast cancer in which abnormal cells are found in the lining of breast milk duct. It is usually treatable but will spread through the breast tissue if undetected or untreated. Invasive ductal carcinoma is a type of cancer that started growing in the breast milk duct and is invading the surrounding tissue. Inflammatory breast cancer is a fast-growing cancer in which cancer cells enter the lymph nodes and skin of breast. Symptoms begin to appear when the lymph vessels are blocked by the cancer cells. Metastatic breast cancer, also known as stage 4 cancer, is when the cancer has spread to other parts of the body, including the brain and the lungs. There's no way to really prevent breast cancer, especially if you have a family history of it. However, there are steps you can take to minimize your chances of getting it. These steps include self-observation, meaning that you should examine yourself every once in a while and consult your doctor as soon as you see any symptoms or changes in your breasts, maintain a healthy weight and exercise, as well as limit alcohol and breastfeed. Here are some statistics for breast cancer. Around 1 in 8 women in the United States will develop breast cancer at some point in their lives, while the risk factor for men is around 1 in 833. Family history of breast cancer also plays a huge role in a woman developing breast cancer because her risk almost doubles if she has a first-degree relative, meaning mother or sister, that was diagnosed with breast cancer. That was all for breast cancer. I hope you learned something new.
So a type of treatment for breast cancer is honeybee venom. It may sound like a little strange, but it has actually been proven to be quite effective. Don't worry though, it only kills the cancer cells and it leaves the healthy cells alone. Honeybee venom is able to do this because of an active component that's in its venom. The component is called melittin, and these are the molecules that make bee stings painful. The venom is even able to kill cancer cells from triple-negative breast cancer and HER-enriched breast cancer. These are the most aggressive types of breast cancer, and they're also very hard to treat. The venom kills the cancer cells by destroying the outer membrane of the cells, and it also disrupts the cell's ability to grow and divide. The honeybee venom and melittin prevents the activation of receptors for growth factors in the cell's membrane. The HER2 enriched breast cancer and triple-negative breast cancer are filled with these receptors, so that's why the venom is able to work on them.
Hello everyone. So we're going to move on to prostate cancer, which is caused by changes in DNA of a prostate. You can see a picture of it in the top right corner on the slide. You may not know what the role the prostate has in the body. It is to produce seminal fluid. Because only males have prostates, prostate cancer only occurs in men. Symptoms of prostate cancer include trouble urinating, blood in urine, and weight loss, and unfortunately, because the prostate cancer is unclear. There are many different types of prostate cancer, some of which include neuroendocrine tumors and sarcomas. The most common type, however, is adenocarcinomas, with nearly 100% of all prostate cancer caused by them. Your age, ethnicity, family history, and diet can all determine your risk for prostate cancer. The older you are, the higher the risk is for prostate cancer. Also, prostate cancer occurs in certain races more than others. This correlation is unclear, however. Though the cause of prostate cancer is unclear, there are many ways to prevent getting it. Make sure to live a healthy life by exercising regularly and avoiding smoking and heavy drinking. Also, be sure to get screened for prostate cancer depending on your doctor's recommendation. And note if you have any symptoms of prostate cancer and tell your doctor immediately. Lastly, here are some interesting facts about prostate cancer. It is the second leading cause of cancer death in men after lung cancer. And if prostate cancer is detected early and the cancer is still localized, which means it hasn't spread to other parts of the body, there is a 99% rate of survival. However, if the cancer has metastasized to other parts of the body, treatment is more difficult. Hence, the survival rate sharply drops to 31%. Thank you. Hopefully you learned something new about prostate cancer. Now we'll move on to melanoma.
Melanoma is a type of skin cancer that develops when melanocytes start to grow out of control. Melanoma is much less common than some other types of skin cancers, but it's more dangerous because it's more likely to spread to other parts of the body if not caught and treated early. The first melanoma signs and symptoms include a change in existing mole and the development of new pigmented or unusual looking growth on your skin. Characteristics of unusual moles that may indicate melanoma include a symmetrical shape, irregular border, changes in color, and growing diameter size. Melanoma occurs when something goes wrong in the melanin-producing cells that give color to your skin. Normally, skin cells develop in a controlled and orderly way, where healthy new cells push older cells towards your skin surface, where they die and eventually fall off. But when some cells develop DNA damage, new cells may begin to grow out of control and eventually form a mass of cancerous cells. Just what damages DNA in skin cells and how this leads to melanoma isn't clear. It's likely that a combination of factors, including environmental and genetic factors, causes melanoma. Still, doctors believe exposure to ultraviolet or UV radiation from the sun and from tanning lamps in beds is the leading cause of melanoma. Treatment for melanoma includes surgical removal, immunotherapy, targeted therapy, chemotherapy, and radiation. However, treatment choices depend on the stage of the disease, the location of the tumor, and your overall health. Factors that may increase the risk of melanoma include fair skin, excessive UV light exposure, having many moles, genetics, and a weak immune system. Now let's hear about colon cancer.
Hello, so let's talk about colon cancer. By its name, you can probably tell it's cancer located in the colon. For reference, the image on your right is a picture of your colon. It's part of the large intestine and helps us remove water, salt, and nutrients for poop. So I guess you can say the colon's an essential part for digestion. First off, colon cancer is a cancer that begins in your colon. Sometimes it's called the colorectal cancer because it can happen on the rectum too. According to Healthline, there are also various types of colon cancer, which are determined by the type of cell that turns cancerous. However, the causes of colon cancer isn't too clear. Genetic mutations may cause cancer and cause abnormal cells called polyps to form. Polyps are benign, but they can become cancerous. You can remove polyps through surgery. When you have colon cancer, you start to have changes in your stool or bowel habits, aka poop. You might have bleeding in your stool or rectum, which is definitely not normal. Additionally, you may have abdominal discomfort. However, some people have no symptoms in the early stages. As the colon cancer continues to spread, you may have swelling, breathing difficulties, weakness, and more. Colon cancer becomes a risk when you're older, have a history of colon cancer, a history of drinking up a lot of alcohol, smoking, being inactive, and more. Consequently, you can prevent having risk factors for colon cancer by having a healthy diet, regular exercise, managing stress, reducing alcohol or smoking, and doing regular cancer screenings. For those who have colon cancer, statistics say that the 5-year survival rate is 63%. As for rectal cancer, is 67%. The treatments for colon cancer include surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, or medicines. Now, let's go on to a common cancer, lung cancer.
Okay, so hey everyone, now we'll be going over lung cancer. By definition, lung cancer is a disease in which the cells in the lungs grow out of control. These cancerous cells may spread towards lymph nodes and other organs like the brain. Unfortunately, cancer from other organs may also spread towards organs that are yet to be affected, and this is called metastasis. Next, we will be diving into lung cancer symptoms that everyone should be aware of and look out for. There are many factors that I did not list on the slides, as I did not want to overcrowd it, but I will state it aloud instead. So symptoms include cough that seems to just worsen over time, constant chest pain, repetitive shortness of breath, coughing up blood, weight loss, loss of appetite, frequent headaches, bone pain or fractures, blood clots, and more. If any of these symptoms appears, remember it does not always have to be related to lung cancer or cancer in general. However, if it does get more severe or you're constantly more worried about it, please call 911 or check with your doctor to take precaution. All right, let's learn about the causes of lung cancer. I'm certain that most of you know that one of the biggest causes of lung cancer is smoking. In fact, smoking tobacco causes 90% of the population's lung cancer, and that is super alarming. Sometimes even if you do not smoke, there is this term called exposure to secondhand smoke, meaning, let's say, for example, someone on the street is smoking and you're walking by and you inhale it. That is called secondhand smoke, and it is still dangerous. If you have previous radiation therapy to the chest for like another cancer, unfortunately, you can also increase your chance of encountering lung cancer, even though radiation is useful at times of killing or slowing certain cancerous cells. It does have its negative side effects. Exposure to radon gas is also another factor. So radon gas is basically produced by the natural breakdown of uranium in the soil, rock, water, and this becomes present in the air we breathe, including at our homes. Lastly, your family history, depending if you had ancestors who had lung cancers, sadly, it may also increase your risk and chance of this disease. Next, let's go over the types of lung cancer. There are two different types or main types of lung cancer. One is called small cell lung cancer, and under microscope, it is the shape of an oat. Often this type starts in the bronchi, which is a spot in your lungs. This type is also found in fewer than 20% of the population. The other type is called non-small cell lung cancer, and this is the most common type. About 9 out of 10 people diagnosed with lung cancer has this type. This type develops slower than small cell lung cancer. However, this one in this early stage has very few to no symptoms until it is in its advanced stage. All right, so you guys may be wondering who are more prone to lung cancer. Well, I actually kind of stated it before. So definitely people who smoked or people who has ancestors who had lung cancer are at a higher risk of developing this disease. It has also been shown in data that people over the age of 65 are more likely to be diagnosed with lung cancer. So the older you are, the more risk you might be at. Fortunately, there are many ways reducing the risk of developing lung cancer. So one way is to not smoke at all or try your best to quit smoking if you are. It can definitely be hard at times to quit smoking, but with the right trusted peers and seeking out for help, you can definitely quit smoking. Another big one is to avoid secondhand smoke, like I said before. Also, you should get your house tested for radon gas to avoid breathing in this toxic chemical that increases the risk of lung cancer. Lastly, regularly exercising or just taking simple walks can lower your risk of lung cancer significantly. As for statistics, in the United States alone, about 80% to 90% cause of lung cancer death is due to smoking. Data has also shown that 1 in 16 people in the United States in their lifetime will be diagnosed with lung cancer. The survival rate of patients who have been diagnosed with lung cancer that has already spread to other organs is sadly about 5%. However, if it's discovered within the lungs, the survival rate is roughly 56%. So I hope you guys learned something new and interesting about lung cancer. In the next slide, you guys will be learning about leukemia.
Now we'll talk about leukemia. To start, what is leukemia? Well, leukemia in simple terms is blood cancer. Leukemia can be described as cancer in the blood-forming tissues of the body. This includes the bone marrow and the lymphatic system, which is an organ system part of the circulatory and immune system. Blood has 4 main parts: plasma, platelets, red blood cells, and white blood cells. White blood cells are what leukemia is typically involved in. Your white blood cells work to fight infection. This means that leukemia weakens the body's ability to fight infection. In leukemia-affected patients, their bone marrow produces too many abnormal white blood cells that don't function properly. Next, we'll discuss the symptoms of leukemia. All symptoms of the disease will depend on the type, so these symptoms are the most common leukemia symptoms. These include tenderness or pain in the bones, easy bleeding or bruising, fever, chills, weakness, constant fatigue, frequent or severe infections, losing wait without trying to, recurring nosebleeds, excessive sweating, especially at night, tiny red spots on the skin, swollen lymph nodes, and a large liver or spleen. It is common for people to overlook symptoms of leukemia as the flu or other common illnesses, but it is very important to see a doctor if you experience these symptoms continuously. Moving on to the causes of leukemia. It isn't 100% understood what causes leukemia. However, there are a variety of genetic and environmental causes contributing. Generally, leukemia forms when there are mutations in the DNA of blood cells. When these mutations occur in the blood cells, the DNA tells the cells to continue growing and dividing instead of being at the normal rate that they would grow and divide at. When the blood cells continue to divide and grow, the production of blood cells goes out of control. This leads to abnormal blood cells crowding out the healthy blood cells in the bone marrow, which results in fewer amounts of healthy blood cells. You can see a picture of this on the bottom right. This is essentially what causes the symptoms and signs of leukemia. So while there isn't a specific cause of leukemia, there are things that can cause mutations in your cells, such as smoking and radiation. Now you might be wondering, what types of leukemia are there? The types of leukemia are acute lymphocytic leukemia, acute myelogenous leukemia, chronic lymphocytic leukemia, and chronic myelogenous leukemia. You may have noticed that all of these types are either acute, chronic, lymphocytic, or myelogenous. These are the different classifications of leukemia. Acute or chronic refers to how fast the cancer progresses. Acute leukemia gets worse faster and requires more aggressive treatment, while chronic leukemia is slower and could go unnoticed. Lymphocytic or myelogenous is the type of white blood cell affected. Lymphocytic is lymphoid cells, while myelogenous is myeloid cells. As discussed before, there are people who are more likely to get leukemia. Most cases of leukemia occur in children. The group at the highest risk is children under the age of 5. Despite this, leukemia can be found in people of all ages. Some other risk factors are previous cancer treatment, smoking, exposure to chemicals such as benzene, which is found in gasoline, a genetic disorder such as Down syndrome, and finally, family history of leukemia. That said, the only things that could reduce the risk of leukemia is avoiding things such as tobacco and exposure to pesticides and industrial chemicals. To finish up leukemia, here are some statistics. From 2009 to 2015, the 5-year survival rate was 65.8%. Also, about 376,508 people are living with leukemia or with low activity of leukemia. Next, we'll talk about lymphoma.
Hello, the next type of cancer is lymphoma. The lymphatic system is the system that protects your body from illness. Lymphoma occurs when cancer develops in lymphocytes, which is a type of white blood cell that plays an important role in your immune system. There are 2 main types of lymphoma, non-Hodgkin and Hodgkin, Hodgkin being the one that's more common. The difference between the two is the type of lymphocyte affected. Hodgkin's has large cancer cells called Reed-Sternberg or RS cells, while in non-Hodgkin, these cells are not present. Non-Hodgkin can arise in any lymph nodes in the body, while Hodgkin typically begins in the upper half. The symptoms are similar for both types. They include enlarged lymph nodes, fatigue, night sweats, feeling tired, weight loss without trying to, and a fever. The cause of lymphoma is unclear. However, there's a few risk factors, including having a weak immune system and also having a family history of lymphoma does seem to increase your risk. Treatments for this cancer depend on the stage and the type of lymphoma. Some things that your doctor might do include watchful waiting, where the doctor will monitor the patient with checkups, and this is usually used for slower growing forms of lymphomas. Chemotherapy, radiation, stem cell transplants, and targeted drug therapy are also used. So when is lymphoma most likely to show up? Non-Hodgkin is more common as people get older, while Hodgkin is more common amongst teens and younger adults. However, they can both show up at any time. Lastly are some statistics. The survival rate for non-Hodgkin is 72%, and the survival rate for Hodgkin is 87%. The reason the survival rate is higher for Hodgkin is that it's usually diagnosed at an earlier stage, and because of this, it's easier to treat. And non-Hodgkin is usually not diagnosed until a later stage. That's all for lymphoma, and we'll be moving on to biotechnology.
Now let's talk about treating cancer with biotechnological advancements. Traditional treatments such as chemotherapy and radiation can impact the entire body, which leads to toxic side effects. Biotech plays an important role in cancer treatments. These treatments include monoclonal antibodies, stem cell transplant, gene therapy, and CAR T.
Our body naturally produces antibodies, which helps our immune system recognize germs that cause diseases, such as bacteria or viruses, and mark them for destruction. Monoclonal antibodies are immune system proteins, which are created in a lab and are able to recognize specific targets. Some monoclonal antibodies are also immunotherapy, as they mark cancerous cells, helping the immune system. Stem cell transplant is a procedure in which healthy blood stem cells are taken from blood marrow and is then returned to the bloodstream after chemotherapy. Since chemotherapy kills both healthy and cancerous cells, blood-forming stem cells help replenish the immune system, as it can form into white blood cells, red cells, or platelets. You may have heard of CRISPR before. Last year, 2 scientists won the Nobel Prize for this invention. CRISPR is a gene editing tool which can alter DNA of human cells like a very precise pair of scissors. After realizing that changes in DNA cause cancer, scientists have been trying to correct these changes through gene therapy. Currently, scientists are testing cancer treatments which involve CRISPR-edited immune cells to better mark and attack cancer cells. Lastly is CAR-T, which is a mix of cell therapy, gene therapy, and immuno-oncology. T cells, which is an important part of the immune system, have receptors which attach to antigens and trigger the immune system to destroy that substance. Receptors and antigens are similar to a lock and key mechanism, where each antigen has a unique immune receptor that it can bind to. Cancer cells also have antigens, but immune cells can only bind to it and destroy it if they have the right receptor. This is where CAR T cells come in. T cells are collected from blood and then modified in a lab to produce special structures called chimeric antigen receptors on their surface. When CAR T cells are reinfused into the bloodstream, the new receptors enable them to latch on to antigens on cancer cells and kill them. And now on to Hela cells.
Yeah, just quickly before we go on to Hela cells, there's a company called Chimera, and they specialize in CAR T cells. So this is one of the images from one of their presentations. So the green cell you see is a CAR T cell, and then it's trying to detect the cancer cell, which is gray. And then so after it detects it, it expels some kind of substance into this cancer cell, and this causes cell death. So just noting the timestamps at the bottom of each picture, this shows that CAR T cell therapy is a fairly quick process.
So what are Hela cells? Hela cells are an immortal cell line used in scientific research, and it is the oldest and most commonly used human cell line. So they're not actually immortal, and they're just called that because they would divide over and over again. Scientists used Hela cells to discover how HPV can lead to certain types of cervical cancer. This discovery would later pave the way for the development of some of the first anti-cancer vaccines. Hela cells are also used by scientists to develop cancer research methods that test whether a cell line is cancerous or not. This method proves so reliable that scientists use it to this day. And over the past several decades, the cell line has also contributed to many other medical breakthroughs, some of which include the development of the polio vaccine, the study of leukemia, and the AIDS virus. Although there are other cell lines that we use today, Hela cells have supported advances in a vast majority of fields in medical research.
Yeah, so we just talked about biotechnology and Hela cells and kind of how that's contributed to research. So after someone is diagnosed with cancer or they complete their treatment, they're usually closely monitored for 5 years. And this is because within those 5 years, their cancer is more likely to return. So this table shows some statistics about the percentage of cancer patients who are still alive after those 5 years. So you can see that over time, the percentages representing the 5-year survival rates have been increasing. So although there are a wide range of numbers on the table, there's a general increase due to the different medical and biotechnological advancements within the past decades. And along with more advanced technology to detect cancer earlier, advancements in treatment methods have made cancer treatments more effective, and this allows oncologists to save more lives.
How many of you had a loved one diagnosed with cancer? Is it possible for them to write in the chat if they've had a loved one diagnosed with cancer?
I think I made it private earlier, but yeah, people are typing in the chat. It seems to be really common.
Being diagnosed with cancer or finding out that someone you care about has cancer can be very overwhelming. It might even be hard to accept or process initially. It can feel scary. Families who aren't doctors or specialized in cancer may not know a lot about it, and hearing the word cancer can make a lot of people feel terrified, or like it's an immediate death sentence. It can also feel overwhelming. It's huge news, and a lot of people might not know how to process it. Some people even feel like it's not real or feel in denial of it. The emotional impact can even cause people to grieve. And since denial and not processing things are generally the first stage of grief, a lot of people will feel that way. Many people also be anxious and feel like nothing is certain anymore. Someone close having cancer can change someone's lives dramatically. Worrying for your loved one or friend all the time, changes in home situations if it's a family member, missing school, work, and the things you enjoy in order to be there for the cancer patient. Just like when grieving, many people who have cancer or who know someone with cancer will attend therapy to help with the emotional burden and shock. There are several types of therapists who specialize in working with people who have or know someone with cancer. There are also support groups for situations like these all around the globe. Many people also reach out to local or online communities because sometimes it can feel nice to have support and people who understand in a non-professional setting. Good doctors and nurses will also be understanding and kind to their patients and know how much of an emotional impact a cancer diagnosis has on people. This is why it's really important to learn how to be kind, sympathetic, and helpful, especially when going into the medical field.
Yeah, and I'd also like to thank everybody for sharing in the chat. I know a lot of times it's kind of hard for people to share about difficult situations in their families, but it's something that's very common and a lot of people have experienced it. So if you do experience it, you're not alone, and you should definitely feel free to reach out to either your friends, trustful adults, or medical professionals. Yes, if you lose something, you definitely experience pain. Yeah, someone or something. So that kind of wraps up what we had to present about for oncology. For our next session, it's going to be on March 21st from 10 a.m. to 10:40 a.m. in Pacific Standard Time. And we're going to have a speaker. It's Dr. Sarah, who's a family doctor and cosmetic injector. She is based in Toronto, Canada, and she completed her undergraduate in biochemistry at the University of Waterloo. So she, right now, like currently, she works mostly with patients in low socioeconomic areas. And you can learn more about Dr. Sarah before our session through her Instagram at Hey Dr. Sarah. So does anyone have any questions or need us to go back to any slide? I know some people dropped in a little bit late. You can feel free to send messages privately. Okay, if there are no questions, I think that means our volunteers did very well in explaining it. Okay, so I think that's it for the meeting. Thank you guys for coming. And if you have any questions you'd like to ask privately, you can stay back as well. All right, so yeah, have a good weekend. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.